Call the meeting to order. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heather, if you wouldn't mind taking roll call?
Commissioner Dibdahl. Commissioner Cronin. Here. Commissioner Wire.
Here.
Commissioner Shaw.
Here.
Mayor Lindsay.
Here. We have before you the agenda for this evening.
Motion to approve agenda as presented. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there anything anyone wants to discuss on the consent calendar? Not, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under unfinished business, approve second reading of ordinance number 1674, amend appendix B, zoning section 1702. Jameson, you want to address that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the second and final approval on this rezoning ordinance. And there have been no changes from the first reading. So this rezones a couple of properties on Southwest First Street from heavy manufacturing to highway business. This better aligns those properties with the desired uses by the owner. It also fits in with the surrounding zones as well, the comprehensive land use plan. Staff recommend approval.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance 1674. Amend appendix B zoning section 17.02.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Discussion and action on possible removal of park equipment at East Center Park. Jameson, do you want to address it or Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you remember, last commission meeting, we had initial discussion on the park equipment, the playground equipment at East Center Park. And this is something that the park board had discussed at a previous meeting and wanted to bring the discussion to the city commission to have final direction on what we'd like to do with the equipment. The equipment is not hazardous or dangerous to users in any way, but it is reaching the end of its useful life. And so the action before us today would be to direct staff on whether we want to refurbish that equipment or remove the equipment. And of course, if we remove it, there's always opportunities to replace it or repurpose the property. But the removal would be the first step there. At the last meeting, the city commission asked staff to try to gather some public feedback and to wait a couple weeks to see what responses we received. And we did create a form that was advertised through social media. The city received 25 responses in that form. In general, they show that the park does have little usage. 20 of the respondents, 56%, said that they rarely or never use the park, and only 20% of respondents said that they use it at least monthly or more. And many of the people, when asked what to do with the equipment, suggested removing and repurposing the area. The numbers are shown in a staff memo that included in the packet. So the options before the commission today, again, are to leave the equipment as is. We would do what we can to refurbish it through some painting other actions, or to remove the equipment or to replace the equipment. New equipment, depending on what you're looking at acquiring, ranges greatly in cost from $75,000 to $150,000 as a ballpark estimate. So those are kind of the options before you today. Staff recommendation is to remove the equipment as again, it's reached its end of life, and we can always replace it if desired or repurpose the area in the future. Staff will stand by for questions.
Go ahead, Mike.
This was discussed again on the November 12th park board agenda, and nobody has commented to any of the park board members about yes, no, anything either way. So, just that basically sums it up. Jameson, everything else.
And then Mike, as you said before, and then the other discussions, this one's right along the creek and it's the first one to flood, and then it becomes a lot of cleanup and maintenance and that, so.
Absolutely.
That's something I think the park board took into consideration.
So every time the creek comes out of its bank, it washes the wood chips off all the playground trips off of the playground. They go downstream, but in the fabric underneath of it. So
I drove
by it the other day and the swing set itself was like it's very usage along the way and I have no problem. I think we're at that point, it needs to be taken out. It'd be interesting to see, I think get it out of there, but then maybe go back to the community and see what they would want us to do with that piece of land. I mean, there's plenty of options, but and ultimately we have the decision in what's gonna go on with it, but it would be interesting to get some input from people.
One thing that I wanna note is in the floodway, probably in the 100-year floodway. So the options might be limited.
Yeah,
on some of the stuff that we do down there, so,
Yeah, I understand.
I mean,
But the other thing, and that, do you still plan on putting an ice rink there and that if it gets cold enough?
if it gets cold enough, we try to, but I mean, we have to have a cold November and a cold December before it's worthwhile. Since the new, storm sewer runs right through the center of it, so it takes the frost out of it every time we try to, so.
Well, and we've got a park board that really takes a look at things and that, and so when they make a recommendation, and then I have a tendency to go along with them.
You know, and maybe in the spring too, maybe there'll be grants where we can maybe apply for grant and get new equipment too.
The other thing is that, we have some flood buyout, properties down in that area that are higher. And so if we were gonna put new equipment, I guess I'd have us look at some of those properties and that, because they're further away from the creek and a little bit higher, so. Other questions or comments? If not,
Was there a comment section on that?
there was.
Yeah, and some of the comments received were kind of in line with what I've already discussed as far as ways to repurpose it. One of the examples we put in the forum was more community gardens, since that was brought up at the last meeting. We feel we do have a good number of community garden spaces, but this would be some community garden spaces more on the east side of town, so just proximity to different residents could be an advantage. A lot of people commented on running a rec trail through there following the creek, which is in line with other feedback we generally receive whenever we look for community feedback. Otherwise, I wouldn't say, there were a few people, I should note that would like to see it kept and refurbished. But there wasn't any large consensus over what the repurpose of the property could be.
I'll make a motion to remove the equipment. And hopefully at some point we'll come back and figure out what we're gonna do with the piece of property.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Under new business, approve resolution 2024-36, designation of directors for Dakota Main Stem Board of Directors. And Jameson, would you like to address that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dakota Main Stem is a regional water system in its very, very early stages. The city of Madison has decided to be a member at this point until we can have more information, decide whether it's in our best interest to join long-term or not. Our previous representative towards that board was Nathan Zimmerman with the Utilities Department. He has left the city a couple weeks ago for a new opportunity. And so we would need to appoint a new director. This resolution appoints Ryan Haig to serve as that representative. Rick Kniper would continue to be the alternate director as a backup. Ryan is the representative to the Lewis and Clark board on the city's behalf. And so staff feel that there would be advantages to having him on both of those systems so that he can have the knowledge from both sides to best represent the city.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2024-36, designation of directors for Dakota Main Stem Board of Directors.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 15, resolution number 2024-37, employee compensation for 2025. And again, Jameson, I'll ask you to address this one.
This is a resolution approved by the city commission at the end of each year in advance of our first pay period of the next year. And so we have several changes here to identify. As far as the content changes, we place a cost of living adjustment that will go into effect first pay period 2025 of 2.5%. In addition, employees are eligible for a 1.5% performance-based step increase. And so those in total would be 4% that employees would be eligible for, and that's established in this resolution. There's been two changes to positions. The first is for the Engineering Community Development Director. This increases the grade from 22 to 24. Ryan has been in this position for about 2 or 3 years, and when he moved in that position as it was transitioned from the city engineer, we did not create a job description at the time, and once we realized that that position didn't have a job description, we spent some time this year to create an accurate job description, what the responsibilities are. And once we re-examine that position and assess where the grade should be at, based on the responsibilities of the position, 24 is more accurate of the grade for that position. And then lastly, the communications director started this year as a coordinator position. This was the first time we had that position. And so at that time, we weren't sure of what candidates we would get or what the exact responsibilities would be. And after having that position for a year, we'd like to move that to a salary department head position at a grade 17. This gives that person a little more authority and recognizes the capability that we have for the director. So those are the content changes. I'll also note, I guess this is also content change, but in the past, we had all the benefits listed for every section. And that led the resolution to be about 10 pages long. And so we have removed those benefits from this resolution and put into a separate kind of benefits document. So the benefits do not change for employees. Those all stay the same and are in full force. But we don't feel that they need to be in the compensation resolution. And that cuts the compensation resolution down from 10 pages to about 4. And that is just a much easier document to understand and to work with. I think the step and grade scale was also part of the resolution in the past. So that was 2 pages of a very large matrix of numbers. Also something that isn't necessary for the resolution. So this resolution will create positions, set them at the appropriate grades. But ultimately the benefits and the step and grade scale are still in full force and operating, but just not found within this resolution. I'll stand by for any questions.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2024-37 employee compensation for 2025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 16, resolution number 2024-39, approving legal services agreement for the 2021 wastewater bond. And again, I'll ask Jameson to address this one.
This resolution retains Meyer Henry Sargent as our bond counsel for the wastewater project revenue bond. This is tied to many of our current infrastructure projects. So we had passed the same agreement for the water bond in 2021, but we missed the wastewater agreement. So this just catches us up for that. The Meyer Henry is our bond counsel. They've been acting admirably in that capacity, and they passed this along asking for us to approve it to get that on the books.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2024-39, approving legal services agreement 2021 watershed bond.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 17, electric rate study update. And Jameson, I'll have you begin this.
Yeah, I'll just give an initial introduction here, and then I'll turn it over to Blair Metzger from DGR. So the city has engaged DGR Engineering in an electric rate study. I suppose that started about a year ago, and Blair has much of the study finished and built. The piece that he's waiting on is completion of our 2023 financial audit, which we expect to be completed probably in the second quarter of 2025. That is something that we'll be starting quickly, but it takes a few months to get done. So when we look at electric rate studies, I'd say the two things that I'll emphasize before turning over to him is one, we look at the projected revenues that we're receiving on our rates, and we compare that with the projected expenses that we're having currently in addition to the capital projects that we have coming up for the next few years. And we want to make sure that we each year have enough revenue coming in to cover those expenses. Secondly, we have a number of rate classes in this community ranging from industrial down to residential. And depending on those types of customers, they have different needs for what the electric system looks like. And we want to make sure that each of those classes are paying their fair share, not more, not less. So some customers require a lot of demand, some require a lot of power, and based on the classification of those customers, we want to make sure that people are paying a fair amount. Those are, I'd say, two of the big things that Blair looks at when he's looking at this. We have not had any increases in quite some time. Our last increase was in 2020 at 1%. A couple of years before that, we're still at 0%. A lot of that is driven by 0% rate increases from Heartland Energy. They provide about, I'm going to say, 2/3 of our electric power needs. And with their rates being flat for many years now, that helps us substantially be able to keep our flat rates. We are at a point where, based on the projects we have coming up, some projects that were accelerated due to circumstances outside our control, we know that we have a lot of costs coming up, and we know we need to look at rate increases. So I'll let Blair kind of go through that and reach the two options that he provided in the memo that was included in the agenda packet. Blair, go ahead.
Good evening. So can I do a mic check here? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so thank you for letting me participate in the meeting tonight. I'll go through the where we're at with electric rate study currently and get us to a point where some decisions need to be made here. Jameson did a good job of explaining the background. I won't go through all that again. Hopefully you've read the memo. I put the one-page memo together there to kind of guide the discussion here. I'll probably just work my way down through that. If there are questions, feel free to stop me or we can go through them after I'm done. But as Jameson mentioned, we started this about a year ago. It's taken some time to get rolling and get traction due to a variety of things. However, we have reached the point where the financial piece needs to be addressed and some decisions made. As he mentioned, we also will look at cost of service and rate classes and all that later. But right now, where we're at is we need to talk about the big picture financial revenue picture for the utility. So later on, we'll get to proposed rates and what that means for different customers and all that. That'll be down the road. But for now, we need to talk about where we're at in general. The reason we decided to move forward with this piece now, even though we're not really complete with the study, is because, as Jameson mentioned, there's a need for some increases. And the sooner we start working on that and addressing that, the easier it will be for people. The longer we wait, the more difficult it's going to be financially to make it happen. So I'm going to go through, build the case, if you will, for the need for the rate increases, and then we can talk about the options when I get done. So when we do these rate studies, we build a model of your financial situation there for the electric utility. So we're talking electric utility only here. And we look at a 5 or 6 year time period to try to understand what the needs for revenues are for the utility. And we're far enough along in that. Some of the information you've probably seen is called or is in draft format. So there are some things we need to finish up before we finalize it, but we're certainly at a point where we can make some preliminary decisions. So the rate model includes all of your operating costs of running the electric utility. The most significant one for electric utility, every one that I work for, is the power supply and delivery cost, what it takes to get power from others to your community. So that's a big number there. In addition, we also look at other operating expenses, all the things it takes to operate a utility. In addition to that, it was mentioned that there's some capital improvements that you're facing that need to be done. Some of which are driven by some of the age of equipment. You've had some nice growth in the community and things are happening, which is a good thing, but that does drive the need for some improvements. There's other reasons for capital needs, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So that's a big aspect that helps to identify the need for revenues. And then also anything else that takes cash. For example, you have a transfer to the general fund every year. You're right there in the ballpark of what is typically done, somewhere between 5 and 7% of your revenues. So that's built in and included in the need for your revenues from your electric customers. So when we talk about what's really causing the need for rate increases, there's several things. One of which is the increases to your power supply costs. And the biggest one there is WAPA, or the Western Area Power Administration. That side of the cost, as Jameson mentioned, Heartland rates have been flat, so that's not an issue here. But the Western Area Power Administration implemented a rate increase last year, and they've got 2 more planned in 25 and 26. That will increase your power supply costs something in the range of $500,000 a year when it's all said and done. So, that adds to the need to increase rates to cover that. As you're all aware, other operating costs have gone nowhere but up in the last 5 years due to inflation and everything else, whether it's wages or the cost to buy to operate equipment or anything else has all gone up. Looking at the numbers quickly, it looks to me like about another $500,000 in operating expenses has been imposed on the utility over the past decade. So those are things that need to be covered as well. And then finally, as was mentioned, the capital improvements projects that are facing the utility. I put in the memo there's 3 categories that I haven't kind of categorized or put into. The total is about $16 million, so a big number here. We're not talking small improvements; we're talking large items. 9 of that has to do with replacing either aged equipment or making improvements to accommodate growth. And that's primarily the green substation and the green substation and power plant transmission lines. In addition to that, some of the regional transmission facilities in the area are being converted to 115 kV from existing 69 kV. And so to accommodate that, the southeast substation has to be rebuilt in parts of it, and the transmission line to it. And that's going to take another $4 million in round numbers to do that. And then finally, you've been on a nice process of converting overhead older lines to underground lines over the past couple decades, I guess you'd say, and that is scheduled to continue. Roughly $3 million in the next 5 years is budgeted for that. Some of that is in the out years 4 and 5. About half of it, though, is already underway or it's under design, so it's sort of in play already. So, in any case, we will need to plan for spending about that $16 million over the next few years, and obviously, you don't have that kind of money in the bank, so that will require some issuance of debt, which is doable. And at the appropriate time, we'll need to get the financial advisor folks on board and get them involved. I've made some initial simple calculations as to what that will take for debt service and so forth, but we'll be able to get that tighter as time goes by. So all those items impact your financial picture. This is what I call a cash flow projection. So what we're trying to do here is keep ahead of the need for cash, whether that's operating expenses or capital or debt service or transfers or all that come into play here. And so what I do in my model is I look at things that are important that you need to meet as the electric utility to stay viable. If you have debt, you have to have debt service coverage. In other words, you have to generate enough cash to make debt service payments. In addition to that, you want to make sure you've got reasonable reserves on hand so that if something major would come up, you'd have some cash to be able to address it, and those sorts of things. And so I've done all that, crunched all those numbers, and have come up with a plan here that I think will work. And in my world, I think people generally would prefer to have increases spread out over time versus one huge increase all at once. And so I've kind of taken that approach as I've looked at these numbers. We're still talking some pretty sizable increases. We're kind of playing catch up on some of those operating expenses. Plus, we're trying to get ahead of the debt service that will need to be addressed. So if you look at your memo there, I put together a couple different options, calling them option 1 and option 2. And what that simply is me going into my spreadsheet and adjusting rates by those percentages over the next 5 years, and making sure that at the end of the 5-year period, we're sitting about the same place and we're sitting in a good spot both in terms of debt service coverage as well as your unrestricted reserves. And so I started with option one, and what that really is trying to do is get ahead of it earlier and get to a point where we can be sort of in the range of regular cost of service level increases of 3% type of thing as quickly as possible. But that would require an increase in 2025 of 9%, dropping to 8% in 2026, then 5%, and then 3 and 3. So that's what I'm calling option one, which if you do that, my numbers so far show that would work and make everything work out okay. We looked at a second option, which is a little less extreme in the first year, but obviously when you do that, you just push the pain down the road a bit. If you can do increases sooner rather than later, that helps to bring in more revenues quickly and helps to make out years better. But nonetheless, as a way to somehow lessen the increases going forward, we could look at option two, which is a series of 7% increases for the next 3 years, and then dropping down to 6 and 5 after that. And I believe at that point, once we get beyond 5 years, we'd be at a point where, barring anything else happening that we don't know about, you'll be back to hopefully no increases or very small ones going forward. It would certainly swallow the big numbers you're trying to accomplish here. So those are the two options we've looked at. I have run a few numbers where we tried to go lower in the first year to try to lessen that impact in 2025. You could do that, but what that does is it makes the future increases much higher. It just pushes the pain farther down the road. And it's something that I think, you certainly could decide to do. I would probably not recommend that. I'd recommend that you pick one of these two options and just go for it and get the process going. So lastly, I'll just talk to a couple caveats and clarifications I have there on the sheet, just so that we have them out there. Number one is, as was mentioned, we don't have the 2023 audit yet. So we're starting or launching from a point of using your internal numbers, which we hope will be accurate and supported by the audit. But if for some reason something changes there, we may have to come back and relook at that. And as I mentioned earlier, we've not really engaged the financial advisors yet. Once we get to that point, I'm certainly available to help with that. I typically do that. And we try to go back and forth and tweak numbers and try to structure things so that the pain is lessened as much as possible on your customers, and structures the debt in such a way that we can do that. So as we go through all that, we can tweak these numbers for future years and arrive at what's needed to meet the coverage that we need to meet there. And the final note there really is that what I would suggest is that we go ahead, decide on a rate increase, and apply it across the board to all your existing customers in the current rate classes they're in. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking at cost of service rate study, which means we're looking at classes and rate structures. And so once we do that, there may be different impacts to different customers depending what we find there. But for now, I'm suggesting we go right ahead and just do it across the board, and then we'll make any additional tweaks in future years once we get through the rest of the rate study. So that's really all I had to present. What we need from the commission is a decision on a rate increase for next year that can be built into the budget, and we can plan on going forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to anybody with questions.
Hey, questions or comments?
What was the general fund contribution, Jameson?
6.5%.
And that's pretty common, Blair said.
I guess we could ask Blair that. Blair, what do you typically see for transfers from the utility enterprise to a general fund?
Yeah, so I've seen studies on that the APPA, or the organization that kind of is a lobbying group and the advocacy group for the public power world, which would include municipal utilities. And what I have seen is something between 5 and 7% of revenues, of net revenue, or of operating revenues. And I think you're at the 6.5%, if I remember right. So that's right in that number. And so I'm very comfortable with that. I have seen both extremes. I've seen certain cities that don't do much of a transfer, which probably isn't appropriate, because if you were served by a investor-owned utility, there would certainly be taxes paid and property taxes paid, and since you're not taxing yourself for that, it's appropriate to have that transfer. On the other hand, I've seen places that transfer too much and really just milk the electric utility, and they don't then have the ability to spend money on things they need to spend it on, like capital improvements. And so I wouldn't recommend any extreme. If you're in that 5 to 7% range, which you are, it's a good location and a good spot to be, in my view.
Other questions?
I'm just gonna make a comment, and I've talked to Jameson, and I talked to some people in the community, and obviously when you make a rate increase and it's gonna be drastic, it's never comfortable. But I was pretty pro 77765, but now as I pencil this all out, actually it's better to go the 98533 in the end, because you're gonna have a 28% increase versus a 32% increase. So you're gonna take the front end of it hard to begin with, but on the back end, you're gonna have a little less. You're actually gonna save about $6 a month on the back side of this if you don't go with option 2. So
In year 4 and 5.
in your total, yeah, by the time you hit the end of this, you're gonna actually pay less by paying more on the front end. So.
And I would second that. That's what my numbers would show as well.
Yeah.
I mean, delaying it just makes it worse. You know, you have
Yeah,
to
it's just
try to
drag
catch
it
up.
on, make it heavier, and I mean, nobody loves to have more put on them, but since 2010, am I right? We haven't increased a total of 6.2%.
Not 2010, it'd be the last 10 years.
That's 10.
When I added it up, I think it was either 6.2 or 6.5.
And the inflation is at like almost 30%.
Over that same 10-year period, I think it was 28.5%.
So we have to look at the big picture. We probably should have been raising rates all along every year, and we didn't. So really, we're gonna absorb it a little bit for the next few years, and hopefully we can get back on track.
Well, the other thing we've got to take into consideration on that is,
100%.
the other thing we got to take into consideration are the changes that are occurring outside of our, of our decision making. Especially in that, with the changes from 69 kVA to 115, we don't have equipment ready to handle that.
Well,
And so we need to make the changes in order for our city to be able to continue to receive the power we want.
well, that, I guess after penciling it out, I think to me, option 1 is probably the most feasible way of doing this. I don't love it, but everybody I've talked to, and I'm around people all the time, and they understand. They want power at their house, they get it, they have to pay more, and they didn't really squawk about it. No, I know what I was gonna say. And I think people think they're gonna open your utility bill and it's gonna go up 9%. It's not the whole utility bill, it's strictly the electric piece, and we need to emphasize that as well. It's not your entire bill, it's just the electric. It's not my favorite thing to do is increase rates, but we have to look at the long term.
Other questions or comments?
I would just echo that. I think we all agree that we hate to increase rates on people, but unfortunately, it's something I think that we have to do in order to continue to grow and.
If you compare it to groceries 4 years ago, it's a value compared to other items and how they've drastically increased.
I would struggle if we were increasing at 9% and we weren't working on trying to put new equipment in and things like that. We were just saying, here's 9% increase, and we had nothing to show for it. That I have an issue with. But in this situation, this money is helping us build the infrastructure, in my
We
opinion.
have to
We
have.
have to do it. We don't have a choice.
Hey, I'm just gonna open up. Is there anyone from the audience that has a question? Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the commission and that. Any other questions or comments, or do we have a motion?
I make a motion to go with option one.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go with option number one.
And I'll just take the motion to be directing staff, so we'll put together a rate resolution to bring it back in the future. Probably one of the December meetings for sure, and so that would put the rate, changes in effective 2025, I assume January 1 or something.
Yes, those people that are on financial assistance or need that help, we have programs in this community to help you with those things. And I think that's the other thing is, yes, it's an increase, but there are programs if you need help, come to city office, we'll help you get things squared away.
Our utility billing staff are very well versed on any assistance programs, and we'll be sure as we communicate with the public on what that rate resolution would do when we bring that we'll include that information there as well.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we will move on to.
We gotta vote on
Do we need a motion today, or you just need direction?
I need direction. I mean, if you want to pass a motion to direct staff, you sure could, but it's not necessary.
Okay, we had a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Number
Right.
19. Consider award of bid number 965, Recycling Center Operational Services.
You go back to
that one.
I sure did. I wrote my notes right after that one. Number award bid, Madison Water System Improvement, segment 5B. And then I'll ask Jameson to address this and I'll change where I wrote my notes.
I'll have Brian come up and do it.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, so this is segment 5B. This will be the last segment for our SRF projects that we'll award. All the other projects are underway, so this is the last one. We received bids on October 29th, 2024. There was 3 bids received. Those ranged from about 1.7 million to about 2.2 million. The low responsible bidder was Winter Contracting LLC out of Brookings, in the amount of $1,696,961. The engineer's estimate on this project was about 1.8 million. The bid is in order and the project is within the estimated project budget. In fact, we have a little bit of surplus with those SRF projects. So if there are any change orders, we can absorb those. So we would recommend that the city award this construction contract to Winter Contract.
Questions or comments?
What was engineering bid again?
$1,807,015.25.
So under estimate.
Yes.
Other questions? Comments? Okay, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to award bid Madison Water System Improvements, segment 5B to Winter Contracting, in the amount of 1.696 million. It's not.
second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 19, consider award of bid 965 Recycling Center Operational Services. And Jameson, you want to address that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 1 month ago, we had a bid opening process for the same contract. We had only received 1 bid from Valiant Living at $14,500 per month. After discussion, the city commission rejected that bid and directed staff to rebid and also explore some other alternatives in the month that bid would take. Those alternatives were whether we could hire staff internally to complete this work ourselves instead of contracting out. And the other alternative would be to switch to single stream recycling, which wouldn't require the recycling sorting that is included in the service contract. We have had 2 bids this time. Valiant Living had the same bid as the month before, $14,500 per month. And then the new bid was from Eric Christensen, which is a new low bid of $10,200 per month. This is a lot closer to what our current operating costs are. This is a 2-year contract, both the one that's expiring as well as the one we're bidding out here. Again, at the same time, we looked at other options. We want to bring those to you as well. The internal staff option would, by our estimates, bring in the same amount of revenue as we'd be doing the same kind of work and be able to sell the recycling for some profit. The expenses on that was about $546,000, and so that would lead to a loss next year of $16,300. I should say first that if we would go with Eric Christensen as a low bidder, same revenue, losses would be $532,000. Excuse me, expenses would be $532,500, and so that loss would be about $2,400, so very close to breaking even on the recycling fund for next year. I should note that the recycling industry, as we know, is very volatile, so these are all just the best estimates we can give. Then the last option was the single stream recycling, so this would be a drastic change for our recycling services as well as for our customers. Instead of taking the recycling in a few different categories and then sorting it out from there in the recycling center and baling it and selling it, instead of all that, we would simply collect it all into one can, single stream, and then we would have to have a new dump truck, a new garbage truck to take it to Sioux Falls, and then we would have to pay Millennium Recycling to take those materials from us rather than selling the sorted materials like we do now for some revenue. So the new costs, the new expenses there would be transportation costs, disposal fees, and then also some one-time costs of a new garbage truck, as well as recycling carts, one per customer. So all those estimates are included in the staff memo. So with this option, the numbers change substantially. The revenues would be $470,000, and then the expenses in the first year would be $781,000, loss of $310,000 for the year. If you remove some of those initial expenses, there would be a profit of $9,000 on the year, but that's in staff view a marginal profit to have some large changes to explore the single stream recycling. At this point, staff recommendation is to award the low bid to Eric Christensen. This would allow us to continue operations as we have been doing with no significant changes, with the revenue and expenses similar to what we've been seeing today. That would allow him to operate the service contract for 2 years, and then we could certainly revisit in 2 years' time at that point. I'll note that Eric Christensen is a city employee. He is a heavy equipment operator on the garbage truck. And so he knows the recycling operations and the sorting very well. He helps out there as needed, help them catch up. And so I would say that gives me some relief knowing that it's somebody that just knows the operations very well. He knows what he's getting himself into, and he feels confident that he can provide these services. I'll stand by for questions.
Questions or comments?
Would hours of operation be similar?
Yeah, ultimately,
Any,
I'll just let Gary answer that.
Yeah, I think the hours would remain the same. We could tweak them as he needs to for whoever he hires, so. I think he's looking at some high school kids, so. I think that's. Mainly what he's after is he's gonna. Probably take the first month off of the Wednesdays just to get his foot in the door and get figured out and then. But, yeah, I think the hours of operation be basically the same. And your Wednesday, Thursday, that's your heavy days, so he's gonna have to definitely be in there all day for that. So. Yeah, he knows the operation inside now, and he's in there every day, so.
shouldn't see significant change then to what we have.
I don't foresee anything, but that's good test, I guess, so.
Just trying to public drop off. I don't think the public will notice any difference.
That's what, yeah.
No. And I would allow him, if he wanted to work Saturdays, we would allow that. That would probably allow people to bring it in on Saturday more so than what we do now. We're 9 to noon right now, with nobody there, so we had some attendance. They might tend to bring it in more, so.
Other questions? Comments? If not, do we have a motion?
Motion to award bid 965 recycling center operational services to Eric Christensen for 10,200 a month.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
I abstain.
Okay, motion carries. Did you note an abstention?
No.
I abstain. Yeah, because I'm really interested.
Okay. Number 20, authorize the mayor to sign change order number 2, Madison Water System Improvement Segment 2 with Asphalt Surfacing Company. Ryan, would you like to address that?
Yes, I would. So segment 2 is the North Union Avenue project from 5th Street to 9th Street. This change order would just be to make a final adjustment for quantities. So this would be a decrease of $88,750.88. And after this change order is signed, we could process the final pay request.
Okay. And again, just noting for those in the audience, a decrease.
Yes, decrease.
Okay. Questions or comments?
Make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign change order number 2, Madison Water System Improvement Segment 2, Asphalt Surfacing Company.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 21, authorize the mayor to sign change order number 4, Madison Water System Improvements, Segment 3, with Prunty Construction Incorporated. And again, Ryan, you want to address this one?
Yeah, so segment 3 is the Roosevelt, Maplewood, Northeast 6th and Northeast 8th Street project. This is very much the same. It's final adjustment of quantities. This is also a decrease. It's a decrease in contract amount of $10,577.25.
Okay, questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
Make a motion authorizing the mayor to sign change order number 4, Madison Water System Improvement Segment 3, Prunty Construction Incorporated.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 22, authorize the mayor to sign change order number 2, Madison Water System Improvement, Segment 5A, Asphalt Surfacing Company. And again, Ryan, would you like to address this?
Yes, segment 5A is the Southwest 4th Street and South Union Avenue project. That's a 2-year project. We've completed phase 1 and phase 2 of that project. During the phase 1 construction, it was identified that it was believed that there was a 48-inch storm sewer pipe that was running down Union Avenue. Turned out that it was actually a 54-inch reinforced concrete pipe. Due to that being a larger pipe and due to adding bid items for installation of a junction box to accommodate that 54-inch RCP, this would be an increase of $15,601.37.
Any questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor. I should mention too, Asphalt Surfacing Company has also requested 4 working days be added to the milestone completion date as well. So this would be an increase of $15,601.37 and adding 4 working days to the milestone completion date. Apologize.
Questions at all? Not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign change order number 2, Madison Water System Improvements, Segment 5A, Asphalt Surfacing Company.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 23, authorize the mayor to sign change order number 2, Park Creek Walls Improvement Site 1, Kesselute Excavation and Dirt Work Services. Ryan, you want to address this one?
Yeah. Site 1 of the Park Creek Walls, this would be north of 7th Street. This work is all completed. This is similar to the first two change orders as a final adjustment of quantities. This results in a decrease of the contract price of $18,836.25. So a decrease again.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll authorize the mayor to sign change order number 2, park break wall improvement site 1, Castelloot excavation and dirt work.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 24, discussion and action related to contract dates, Madison Water System Improvements, Segment 3. Again, Brian, would you want to address this one?
Yeah, I would. So this segment 3 project, Roosevelt, Maplewood, Northeast 6th and Northeast 8th Street. Yeah, a little background, Prunty began construction on segment 3 in July of 2023. That work was completed on phases 1 and 2, and the roadway was open to traffic on October 9th of 2023. So this was 6 working days past the contract milestone of October 1st. City, Banner, and Prunty had completed a walkthrough and generated a punch list. Prunty Construction worked on that punch list pretty diligently, completed a lot of that work in that fall of 23. And we were quite happy with what they had gotten done that year, even though it was slightly past the contract date. For the 2024 construction phase, Prunty began that work in April of 24. The work was completed and the roadway was open to traffic on August 13th. The only work remaining after that was some sidewalks and some driveways and flat work concrete, but the street was usable and it was substantially complete. We completed a walkthrough on that on September 10th and generated a punch list of items. Prunty began working on that punch list again diligently and completed that. They finished that punch list on October 25th, 24. This was 16 working days past the October 2nd contract final completion date, and thus is the reason for the city's consideration. Included in the agenda packet is a letter from Alex Welbig, who was the project manager from Banner. The 3 options that Alex and I had discussed and that we're bringing to the commission is you can either take no action and assess liquidated damages for the working days that have accumulated beyond the final completion date of October 2nd. That would be 16 days for the work in the entirety of the project. That would account for that first year as well as the second year. Option B would be to change the final completion date to match that completion of October 25th, 2024. That would result in no liquidated damages being assessed. And then option 3 is also somewhere in the middle. That would allow staff to negotiate with Prunty Construction, and then we would bring back a proposal on what we've agreed on as far as liquidated damages for your consideration if you'd like us to do that. Some additional information I want to mention is that Prunty Construction was issued a number of field orders. I believe there were 10 of those. I believe there was a number of change orders. There were also a number of requests for price. I believe there was 4 or 5 of those. So there was additional work beyond what was planned. A couple of those items were building some temporary roads for some people that had mobility issues. Those things took time. Those things took material and effort, and nowhere along the line did Prunty Construction ask for additional days. I think had they done that, they would have been warranted, and we're probably not having this discussion. They just focused on trying to get that work complete. They were still feeling like they could do it within the contract time. As it turns out, they were a little bit late, but they've been very, very good to work with. And I feel like because the project was completed in a timely manner, the roads were open for the DSU opening of the athletic complex. My recommendation is to change that final completion date to October 25th, 2024, and not assess any liquidated damages. And I'll stand by for any questions and take your recommendation.
we track rain dates, no?
No, so, this is not accounting for rain dates either. They probably were warranted. Well, you know, in the letter from, Mr. Welbig, it kind of addresses a couple of those things. It mentions that, Ryan gave verbal approval on 5 calendar days. Those were noted rain days. Those were days that I felt that the commission would grant. I mean, they clearly were rain days. They clearly weren't days where they could work at all. So we did address some of those here, and that would be separate. Frank Construction probably has an argument that there were additional ones. So, and those weren't taken into consideration.
I mean, they have been good to work with.
Mhm.
I don't know about it.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments?
I don't see a problem with extending that maybe.
The work done within the year, we didn't have to go a whole winter and shut roads down and everything.
If no questions or comments, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to change the final completion date on this project to October 25th, 2024, and no days will be considered for liquidated damages.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 25, discussion and action related to contract dates, Northwest 9th Street and Union Avenue reconstruction. And again, I'll ask Ryan to address this one.
Yeah, thank you. So same topic, very, very different situations. This work, is in Northwest 9th Street, Union Avenue. This kind of backs all the way up to 2021 and involves a lot of the design. In 2021, there was a company hired by the city to do the design. As you probably recall, or maybe don't, that didn't go well. There were a number of issues there, and we ultimately had to part ways with the initial design company. That occurred after the bids. There was a lot of modifications that needed to be done during the project. So the project started in 2022. Winter contracting began late that year in September 6th of 2022. Part of that was due to us having to go back for a second bid due to some of those issues with the initial design. So design changes were made on phase 1 of the project, and it resulted in the contractor having to overcome quite a few manufacturing delays in the storm sewer structures. So they weren't very efficient with that work, or couldn't be efficient with that work. They also experienced a lot of delays due to underground gas utilities. Contractor completed the utility work on November 3rd, which was very late in the year, and a change order had to be executed in November to reconstruct the roadway using an alternate section. We had to come to the commission and come for some sub-base aggregate and such like that. So those delays led to some roadway reconstruction, and temporary surfacing had to be installed for that 2022 winter. 2023 work, they started in May of 23, pavement on Northwest 9th Street between Highland Avenue and Chicago, which was not been able to be completed in 2022, was completed by June of 23. They proceeded with phase 2 of the work, and they experienced quite a few number of delays, again, due to modifications needed on pretty much every aspect of the project. We did modifications to the water main, the sewer, storm sewer, and the sanitary sewer. There were also modifications to the roadway design to accommodate drainage. This led to a number of delays in September. Winter contracting was planning on opening up the Union Avenue portion of this project. We had some concerns that they wouldn't be able to complete that, and we would have a situation of temporary surfacing again. I had elected at that time to reach out to some landowners who expressed hope that the roadway would remain in place so that they didn't have to drive on gravel surfacing. We were also thinking of our own crews and the difficulty that it already is to accommodate snow removal. So I had made the decision at that time to ask Winter Contracting to not proceed with that Union Avenue work. So the work was then completed on 9th Street, and the bottom lift of asphalt paving was done at the end of 2023. 2024 work, winter began May 13th of this year. Work was completed quickly, including all asphalt surfacing, and the roadway was opened up to traffic on July 26th. The punch list was generated and winter contracting has worked pretty hard on that. They're still working on completing some remaining items, but we've moved those to a warranty. And they're working toward final acceptance of the project. Working days for the city's consideration that have accumulated beyond the substantial completion date of October of 23 or 12 days for the work on 9th Street and 52 days for that work on Union Avenue. There's a letter submitted by Mr. Weston Blasius, who is project manager from Banner on this project. Again, there are three options. Option A would be to take no action to move the completion date and assess liquidated damages for the working days that accumulated beyond that substantial completion date. Again, that would be 12 days and 52 days. The total value of that liquidated damages by the contract prices of $1,500 a day would be $96,000. Option B would be to change the substantial completion date on this project to July 26th of 2024. And in that case, no days would be considered for liquidated damages. Or the third option is that middle ground to recoup additional costs that the city incurred due to the project going beyond the completion date. This would allow staff to then negotiate with winter contracting and come back to the commission for a final approval. Just some food for thought. Additional engineering costs are estimated at $52,741. I feel that the contractor dealt with a number of unusual delays on the project that were out of their control. A majority of this was due to extraordinary efforts to try to do some redesign, some field engineering. They accommodated all our requests for additional prices, field orders, change orders, and scope changes. At no time did they tell us that they couldn't complete the work. They just did what we had asked. So the city did experience those additional consultant hours paid as a result of delays, but I feel those were due to the initial design. Those were due to decisions made on redesign of the project, and those were as a result of my choice to have them delay opening up Union Avenue. So it's my recommendation to change the substantial completion date on this project to July 26th of 2024 and not assess any liquidated damages, but I'm certainly open to any questions, and I'm sure that this one's much more complicated.
Falls on the elected body because we hired that original contractor, in my opinion. It's
Who knew at that time?
right, an engineering firm we hired, correct. Start there.
That was part of it, and as I think Brian mentioned, gas company delays, and,
Yeah.
and there were some things that the city elected to request changes onto that didn't have to, but they've accommodated this.
Yeah,
I agree with Brian.
widening of Union Avenue is another example. The initial one was to not have parking on that, and we elected to have Banner take a look at that and see if there was a way to accommodate so that the residents on there had parking. Well, that Winter had to wait for the surfacing plans. They had to wait for the staking of that new curb and gutter. So all of
And
those
there
things
were a number of people from the public that, wanted that redesign as
Yes,
well.
there's certain.
Yes. Other questions or comments?
I got a question. Can't you hold contractors that complete these jobs before they leave the town? I mean, like 9th Street he's talking about, that sidewalk on the south side is owned by the city. It was supposed to be fixed. And we're going in the third year now.
You're on 9th Street, we're on Union.
There shouldn't be a reason to put everything off every year.
There's two things at play there. One thing is Winter Contracting had their construction staging area in that land owned by the city, and so they staged their pipe there and everything, and some of that sidewalk got damaged. We acknowledged that it was a little cracked up before, and so right now we're talking to the contractor and saying, hey, can you just replace these sections for us? I'm not sure they're gonna wanna come back and do that. We do have evidence that it was already cracked. Now it's cracked way worse, and I think that they should replace it, but it is in the grand scheme of things, kind of a minor issue. The other sidewalk that Jim is talking about wasn't a result of the project. It's some sidewalk that's buckling. We tried to get our sidewalk contractor this year to come and do that in addition to the sidewalk project, and they just haven't made it back to town in a timely manner. And we have a number of additional items that we wanted them to complete, so that's not been done yet. Some of that is, you know, due to the project, some of it's not. As far as holding the contractor accountable before they get out of town, I mean, we keep retainage until the project's finalized out. So there is plenty of dollar amount if we needed to cover some of that cost. It's still there. We haven't paid the contractor a full amount yet. And the project's under warranty and will be under warranty until that expires, and until that time, we still have a contract with them.
Other questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept Ryan's recommendation to extend the and they do not liquidated damages.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 26, approve application for property tax abatement, 2024-09. Jameson, you want to address that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Generally, these property tax abatement requests are something we put under consent. We get a few of them a year. But since this is one that covers something, a property the city is affiliated with, I want to make sure we have time to discuss this. So this is related to the property where the First Bank and Trust Sportsplex is currently located. This is for properties from the fiscal year 2023 payable in 24. In 23, the city did not own the property. The Lake Area Improvement Corporation owned the property the entirety of 23. And they are tax exempt, so no taxes should have been charged. However, the county sent the city this bill in the spring when they usually send out most of their property taxes, and we were the owners at that time, so I think that's where the mix-up occurred. The city did pay this earlier this year, and we didn't catch it until afterwards. We were able to submit this abatement form, kind of the LAIC and the city together to request the county to abate those taxes back to us. Those taxes are around about $9,500. Stand by for questions.
Questions or comments?
It could be a credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be $9,500 that come back to the city is my understanding from the 2023 tax.
Would actually come back or just be on hold for the following year.
I would assume it would come back, so
It would
this
come
property
back,
should be tax exempt. Whether it's LAIC or the city owning it should be tax exempt.
Either way.
Yeah, that should be that money coming back to us.
Other questions? Comment? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve application for property tax abatement 2024-09.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Jameson, would you like to update us on the November finance update?
Absolutely. Okay. Heather's got it pulled up on the screen here. So this covers our finances through the month of October. And we did get the sales tax numbers in, so that'll be something I'll be covering at the end here. The only thing to note this month is that our utility billing and offices will be closed on December 9th and 10th. In fact, I think it's safe to say all of City Hall will be closed those 2 days. That's the second Monday and Tuesday in December. We're going to be finalizing our move over to the new building. And on the 11th will be the first day that the new building is open to the public. This is the 11th of December, we'll be open over there. Next slide shows our current cash on hand. You can see the specific numbers. I'll just summarize. Got about $9.5 million of cash available. Most of that, just under $6 million, is tied up in investments, but available if needed. Another $2.3 million is sitting in our checking. Next few are our regular revenue guidelines and expenditures as well, and also by fund. It only shows that we're 40% collected. As I point out in the past as well. A lot of the numbers are skewed here when we don't have reimbursements that have come in for different projects. And then we also should have $1 million or so coming in for property tax in the month of November. It's lots of big influx. Between that and the reimbursements, that shows, makes that show low. And then same with the expenditure, 57.3, with all of a lot of our large projects out there, it does skew those numbers. So you can see where the money's been coming and going. And then Amy also has it presented here by fund. Next slide here for October. You can see we spent about 6.8 million. We brought in about 3.7 million. That's typical for these summer months, and October is kind of wrapping up a lot of those projects coming through the year. Same for year to date. We knew this year we had saved up a lot of money. We had done a lot of financing on these projects. So this is one of those years where more money will be going out and coming in. Moving on to the sales tax. As we've discussed in the past, it's been a very volatile year for sales tax. October is a positive month. We were up about 460,000. That's about 6.7%. And then year to date, that should be a plus on there. That's my typo there. The positive 11.75% change, up 4.4 million year to date. I checked that if we just got 3% or even just 0% over the last couple of months here, we'll still come out well above our increase from the previous year. In particular, the volatile months we talked about in the past, April 50% up. Obviously, nice to see that up. But then, later we had July and August down 16% and 10%. I still do have some requests out to the Department of Revenue to try to get an understanding for why this year is so much more volatile. If you go to the next slide, the visual illustrates that well. The 2024 line, you can see it is up and down quite a bit, whereas the 21 through 23 lines have more seasonality to them and more expected change there. So again, very volatile year that makes it difficult to understand what's going on, but we're hoping to get some more clarity from the Department of Revenue. 2 months left on the year, of course, and so far it's looking like a positive year despite the volatility. Any questions?
Questions or comments? Okay. All right, do we have any public comment?
Maybe, yes.
Okay. Would you come up to the table on that? And then for those in the audience at home and that, if you'd state your name and that, to the owl. Doesn't
Sure.
look like an owl, but that's it.
My name is Matthew Feisner.
Okay.
I come wearing 2 hats. The first one, which I will quickly address, is I want to, as an employee of the city of Madison, thank the commission for the benefits that we've been given over the past couple of years. I think it's been substantial, and we really appreciate those types of things. The second hat that I wear is a resident of the community. The address that I live is 308 South Division Avenue, and that is on a city street, but on the county side of the street. I would just like to remind the commission that any rate increases for utilities such as electric and water affect me exponentially there, because I have a surcharge for being outside of the city limits. I pay 20% extra for electricity and 50% extra for water. I would like to see the council take action to remove that surcharge, to basically make it fair, because like the distance from the transmission lines are the same for my neighbors across the street as they are to my house. That infrastructure was going to have to be put on the street anyway to service the in-town residents, and it didn't cost the city any extra to attach my house to it, but I pay a surcharge of 20% and 50% for my utilities, which it really does add up over time. So I would like to see the city commission at some point take action to remove that surcharge.
Okay. And understanding that the reason that it's there is because you are not a resident of the city.
I understand.
But one of the things I'd like you to consider, and that is talking to your neighbors about being annexed in, then that would take care of that 20%.
I'm not interested in that, but And I don't think any of my neighbors would be either, especially on my street, at least on Division Avenue. One of the requests that came down to us, when they were replacing the water main in the street, one of the things that our neighborhood was gonna request from the city was, an abatement of that surcharge in consideration for the use of our boulevards essentially for the water project. But that didn't end up happening, but I think, I don't speak for any of my neighbors. But I think that, they would all appreciate the surcharge removal.
Well, but you're not the only one that is receiving city services and that, that also has requested not to be part of the city. And so, you know, I guess I would ask them that, you know, if they would like the city services and that and want that removed, that they ask to be annexed. We have a number of properties, more so on the west side of town, that one's out, one's in, one's out, one's in. And then who gets the phone calls and that when the properties and that aren't kept up and that the city does, but there isn't anything the city can do about it. Because basically they're not in the city limits.
Sure.
And so Sioux Falls is another city in that deals with that as well. And Sturgis has done that as well, and I've had contact with all of those, so, but I guess, you know, the 20% is put there for a reason. And that, to cover the costs and that, you know, for servicing people who are outside the city limits. And even though you're across the road, you are basically outside the city limits, and if you choose that that's how you'd like to stay, you know, is outside the city limits rather than being inside the city limits, then, you know, the other, advantages that everybody else pays for and that, you know, there are some things in that you get benefits from, you know, that other people pay for, so, road maintenance, street maintenance and those kind of things, so. I accept your, you know, your idea and that, but I also see, you know, that we as a city are providing services to people who are not part of the city.
Sure.
So,
What did you say your percents were, Matt?
It's 20% for electric and 50% for water. And maybe a reduction in those. I don't know. I'm not familiar with how many people that would affect and what the impact of the city would be in the utility account. So,
well, the impact would be, we would have more people living outside the city that would be requesting city services, you know, that the people inside the city would be paying for. And so that's part of why it's there. I thought it was 25% across the board, but if it's 20 and 50, that's something that, you know, I guess I'd have to look into. So.
One small clarification I'll make is, you know, you don't have to talk to your neighbors. If you were interested in being annexed in, that's something that one property could request. And if you're not interested, that's perfectly fine too. We're not gonna be in the business of pursuing involuntary annexations, but that is something that could be done for any property that borders city limits, which yours qualifies. But again, that's not something we'll push either.
sure. Thank you.
But we appreciate you coming.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this? Okay. So under announcements, the next regular commission meeting will be Monday, December 2nd, 2024 in this room. Okay, and then we also have board openings, 2 3-year terms on the Community Center Advisory Board starting in January 2025. And then I think we still have an opening on the Madison Housing and Rec board as well. So if you have an interest in any of those and that, please contact Jameson. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Hey, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. And thank you everyone for attending. So.